Thank you, Robbie. Can you hear me? Is the mic working appropriately? Good. So thanks, Robbie, again for introducing me. So today I'm going to be talking about an interesting topic. The Commissioner brought it up. What our future looks like with regards to pesticides, fungicides, and some of the synthetic products that we're placing onto the market or using in our cropping systems. So as a one idea, as an opportunity to share with you some ideas of what we see or what we envision being the future for this particular market. As far as production is concerned, most of the farmers and the producers in this room would agree that as we have an increase in more technology, as we have the opportunity to utilize new and advancing things, the yields have soared. Efficiency has gone through the roof. And one way we've been able to do that is by incorporating synthetic inputs. And when I refer to synthetic inputs, I'm talking about fertilizers and pesticides. As we increase our efficiency, we are also increasing the amounts of inputs that we have to be putting onto that those areas. The projected global market is the projected market in 2020 is projected to be $81 billion. So it's a humongous market, and it's a humongous opportunity depending upon where you're going to be in the future. There is more scrutiny now than there has ever been on pesticide use before. Producers and consumers are driving this. The regulations are also following this scrutiny. Depending upon what you're doing, where you're spraying, or how you're incorporating these synthetic chemistries, can play a major role in what's going to transpire in the near future. So the consumer and regulatory pressure that's increasing, we see headlines daily on new regulations that are coming down. Just recently, this past week, I had a colleague from the EU send me a snippet where glyphosate is currently being voted on whether or not it's going to be banned in the EU. Now, glyphosate is one of the most commonly used herbicides globally. What kind of an impact is that going to play for the producers, for the growers, for the big, for the industry in general? How are we going to combat? How are we going to change and adapt should that occur? So we have all this increasing pressure. We have the pressure from the consumer. We have the pressure from an environmental stewardship perspective. We have the pressure from consumers, as I mentioned, but we also are seeing an increase in disease pressure. So our genetically modified plants or genetically modified organisms, we're starting to see resistance. Not starting, it's been occurring over the past couple of years, but we're starting to see disease pressure from that standpoint also increase. So you have a ban, you have a vacuum that's being created that could quite possibly be an unbelievable hit to our industry. So where do we go from here? So as far as that triangle is concerned, what do we do in order to make a change, to be able to adapt, or to be able to try to reduce the amount of pesticides that we're using, please the consumer, and also follow the regulations that are currently being set in this industry? Do we stay with more of the status quo? The status quo being an unsustainable long-term approach. Do we keep increasing the inputs? Do we keep fighting regulations? Do we try to shift consumer focus or consumer preferences? And with the increasing government regulations, what's the possibility? So complete replacement, it is impractical. It's unrealistic, guys. I mean, as far as taking it out 110% from a producer's standpoint, we're not going to stand here and say that we need to immediately flip a light switch and change overnight. It's not a possibility. There's no particular silver bullet alternative. We've proven that time and time again. Regardless of what comes out, regardless of the new synthetic chemistry that's coming out, it's never going to be a silver bullet. Nature continues, and there's always going to be an adaptation that's going to transpire and possibly create a challenge that we didn't even remotely anticipate. So, is there a way to adapt and include the best tactics from each program? Can we incorporate our synthetic inputs along with other biological products or other inputs, combine that in and compete and maintain quality, also maintain environmental stewardship, and quite possibly keep our regulators happy? Integrative pest management. I had a class I was in school for 10 years getting my PhD, and I think every year we always had a class, and I would imagine a lot of you would agree, always a class on integrative pest management. How you set up your management program is key to how you're going to compete and increase your yields. Integrative pest management is key. It's a key to a program for developing not just a program for competing with pests, but also promoting an environmental stewardship perspective. If you incorporate chemical technologies, nutrition, natural technologies, and management technologies, is this the quintessential pinnacle of what we mean when we're talking about an integrative pest management? So traditional strategy is an all-out assault. Typically, if there's something that's going to happen from the standpoint of pest incidents, the automatic response is to compete with added inputs. As far as being able to should this be an approach, I guess, is the question I ask. Should we be going directly to should we be going directly to the field with an all-out traditional strategy, or should we be looking at more of a tactical response? We have technology and we have tools now that we've never had before when it comes to crop monitoring and other tools such as other inputs that we could be incorporating into a program that could be precisely targeting the challenges that we're trying to overtake. Nutritionals. A balanced nutritional program is key, and it's a key component of the integrative pest management program. If your plant is not healthy from a nutritional standpoint, it will not be able to fend or defend itself against a potential pathogen attack. Similar to how we take a vitamin C tablet for when our sister or brother or daughter or son is sick to try to prevent us from getting sick or getting ill, it's the same concept from a plant perspective. If you have a balanced nutritional program, your chances of seeing a pest or competing against a pest is much higher if it's a well-balanced nutritional program. Elicitors and induced resistance. So this is the part of the presentation where I'm going to start throwing ideas at you and some challenges and some opportunities that we think we could be using incorporated into this program that's not routinely looked at. Elicitors and induced resistance. What do I mean by that? Essentially what I mean is utilizing products, utilizing technologies that help the plant to defend itself. Plants respond to their environment just like we respond to our environment. If they are touched, some plants close. If there's sunlight in a direction, they move towards the sunlight. Similar to the disease pressure, if the disease is occurring or we trick the plant into thinking it's occurring, we can also help that plant to start up its biological systems to compete against what could be impendingly coming. Acquired resistance is a prime example for the existence of a form of plant memory. If you can trick that plant into thinking that it's going to be attacked, the plant then can develop its own metabolic pathways to try and compete with that occurring disease. So a couple of these products or a couple of these technologies that I just wanted to point out and share with you. Some that we could integrate from a biological standpoint: plant extracts, enzymes, and beneficial microbes. These are a part of a growing industry and a part of that $81 billion market that I had shared with you in the beginning. It's no secret that we, as far as Alltech is concerned, are excited about this opportunity, but are also that the major players in this field are jumping into this market space as well. particularly when it comes to acquisitions. So microbe versus microbe. If we talk about microbes specifically, there's 3 avenues of control that occur whenever you're utilizing a microbial inoculant. That's competition, mycoparasitism, and antibiosis. So this is the 3 avenues that usually are that are encompassed with utilizing a fungi or a beneficial microbe. Typical inoculants, Bacillus subtilis. That's one of probably the most common ones, one that you would be very, very familiar with whenever we're talking about a microbial inoculant. Lactobacillus plantarum. That's an interesting one. That's one that we really like to look at. Lactobacillus produces lactic acid. Lactic acid, as a result, can produce can help to suppress competing or microorganisms in the environment. It's also a very safe microbe, considering if you like yogurt. Trichoderma, that's another one. That's another big one in the market space right now. Our colleagues that we work with in multiple countries, trichoderma is a big microbial inoculant that's being used globally to try and compete with the synthetic chemistries that are being used. And this is just some examples of an example of some of the research that we have going on here, where we're looking at trichoderma and what we're doing from a yucca root perspective. Dr. Lyons is a big proponent of us not just preaching, but also adapting. So these yucca roots come from our plant in Sudan, where we grow our Yucca shitigera, one of our plant extracts that we utilize from an animal feed and a crop science perspective. So we ourselves are incorporating these technologies into our management practices. Trichoderma, particularly, if I go into it a little bit, have been observed to attacking and killing pathogenic fungi, reducing aflatoxin contamination. They can be used in grapevines. It's an all-around very common approach, right, microbial inoculant. So the question is then, why integrate a natural and a nutritional technologies? As far as fungicide resistance is concerned, if we start incorporating other microorganisms similar to how your fungicide programs, you use different technologies at once, incorporating those types of things along with your nutrition and focusing on a solid plan is a key to a future environmental stewardship program. So a hypothetical program, if I just kind of wanted to share with you what we vision from a hypothetical, I think this graph, again, this graph is just for a visual representation, but this would be what we've envisioned as the future and the standard for incorporating these technologies. Having natural activators, encompassing chemical contact fungicide, utilizing natural biofungicides, and utilizing systemic fungicides along with nutrition. So what I kind of want you to take away from this slide is that it seems to be very complex, but it's actually quite easily achieved. And it's a program that if you really concentrate on, can give you just as similar of, or if not, help you to control your disease pressure with the synthetic program. So my colleagues in Panama and Costa Rica, as far as black sigatoka is concerned, that is a disease, and this is going to be a real-life representation of what we're currently working on in Costa Rica. Black sigatoka, multiple pesticide applications a week. They are routinely spraying bananas. They're routinely spraying weekly inputs of fungicides in bananas. And the question that was raised was, can we reduce that chemical amount? Can we reduce how much fungicides that we're using and incorporate some of the nutritionals as well as some of the natural occurring pesticides that Alltech has? So again, sounds familiar. It's an all-out strategy if you're spraying weekly and routinely in anticipation of a fungal attack. But as Dr. Lyons had pointed out this morning, when he had heard this challenge, he saw this as an opportunity. And he saw this as an opportunity to not just help out our colleagues in Costa Rica, but as an opportunity to incorporate some of our technology. So we have a gentleman in here that moved. Kyle McKinney had moved down to Costa Rica. Dr. Lyons had seen this problem. So what did we do? We built a lab. literally built a lab in Costa Rica to try and combat against this challenge. We've looked at it from a microbe perspective, and we've looked at it from a nutritional perspective. So we are really invested in confirming whether or not this plan and this action is a viable option. So in the lab, from those petri dishes that I was showing you, it was very positive results. But a petri dish is not the field. So when we took that to the field, we had a trial set up down there, and as Dr. Lyons had shown in his slides this morning, we saw a positive result. And that positive result was we reduced the pesticide inputs by 50%, incorporating natural and biological controls into the management program, while maintaining the same disease control. So this slide and that small case study that I shared with you is an example of how you can, and that it does in fact work as far as incorporating that triangle, incorporating those three products, those three facets of that model. And again, as I had mentioned, it's a market space that we're not just in. It's not just Alltech that's preaching this. The acquisitions that are currently being made in the major players' fields, as far as Monsanto with Novozyme, Bayer with AgriQuest, Becker Underwood, and BASF. This is an area that is perceived to be what the future of pesticide control is. And the keys for this market, there's three keys or three takeaway points that I would have with this market. One is you have to incorporate that IPM principle. You have to incorporate standard IPM principles when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to the inputs, synthetic inputs that you're using. Precision agriculture, absolutely. If your field, or you have the ability to split a field, to split an application, use our products, using our products or combined with other products precisely, it's more better from an environmental stewardship perspective. And speed and innovation. Dr. Lyons always talks about speed with innovation. If you're not quick to adjust, if you're not quick to adapt, you could be left in the dust. So we're really excited about this. We've been doing it since 1994 as far as intercrop being incorporated into the Alltech family. We think that it's going to be a major opportunity moving forward, as well as some of the other major players in this industry. So I thank you very much for your attention this morning, and hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Steve. If you can just write down any questions there, Steve, don't run away. I need to ask you some questions. So I guess while we're getting those questions in, a quick question from me. You spoke a little bit about what I understood as stacking these technologies. So what I understood is that your first level of intervention is nutritional, and then maybe come in with a healthy biosphere in terms of maybe looking after the bugs in the soil or in the environment, and then you add the next layer and the next layer. Just maybe talk a little bit more about what you mean by that. What do you mean by stacking? What's the most important? And in what kind of, do you do this in all situations, or do you do it only where the levels of disease are low or high, or when do we use these products?
Sure, that's a good question. Well, obviously, if you're going to incorporate microbes into your program, you wouldn't want to go out, apply the microbe, and then apply a contact fungicide. You wouldn't be doing yourself any favors. So when Robbie had asked the question about stacking, it's important that from a managerial standpoint, if nutritionally you can solve your problem nutritionally, or if you can maintain control nutritionally. I don't think anyone in the room wants to use a fungicide or a pesticide if they don't have to use the fungicide or a pesticide. So incorporating nutritionally or starting nutritionally is obviously the base of the program. Incorporating fungicides and pesticides, it's about using where you have to, and you incorporate the microbes, as Robbie was saying. That also, it's timing specific. If you're going to incorporate synthetic chemistries, you want to make sure that timing or that residual of that synthetic chemistry wouldn't hinder the opportunity of using the microbes. So it's very important, Robbie, from that standpoint of maintaining just a sound management program.
So put another way, don't kill the bug.
Don't kill the bug before the bug helps you.
With the pesticide you're trying to mix it with. Got it. Another question. What are you looking at as far as soil balance in terms of minerals like calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium? What are we looking at?
It's a good question. I guess it depends on where you're at. If I would say probably three big ones right now are zinc, manganese, and boron. They're I would call them a hot topic when it comes to to nutrients that are being incorporated into cropping systems and the timings of those being specific. But as far as managing it, Robbie, I would say it all depends. I think sound tissue testing and soil testing is a prerequisite to determining what's going to happen or what you need to incorporate. So it's a difficult question. I guess it would all depend on where exactly you'd be at. We have colleagues right now that we're working in Spain, and the nutritional program that we're going to use in Spain is not exactly what you want to be using in the state of Florida. So as far as looking at it, we have a great opportunity being as multinational as we are, so we tailor those specific programs to those specific regions.
Well, let me just maybe put that in a slightly different way. I know, for example, you were talking recently about manganese being very involved with water. Does that mean we should be supersizing it, meaning use a lot of it, or do you think there's already a lot there? I mean, how much is too much? Can you just load the stuff on there?
Yeah, that's a good question. How much is too much? I would say it all depends on if the plant really needs it. Magnesium is usually incorporated from a drought perspective because it's very influential in photosynthesis and maintaining that process. So that's a micronutrient from a foliar perspective that you would want to make sure that you're putting on when your plant is actively growing. So I guess it would all depend. It depends really on what your plant needs, the timing, and the year, and when it's occurring.
Okay. Well, I've got a question you definitely won't be able to answer here.
Good.
Of the projected 81 billion pesticide market, how many companies or businesses will be producing these synthetic inputs, especially considering the current pending company mergers? Meaning, where do you see the industry going here?
The industry is going in the direction away from a synthetic input. As far as the acquisitions, those acquisitions, I didn't go into them in depth, but those acquisitions are fermentation companies. The Becker Underwoods and the Novozymes, that's fermentation. So as far as the investment is concerned, those companies, the Bayers, the BASFs, the big guys, they're making those acquisitions because that's where the market's going. They see where it's going and what's going to happen there. So it's quite evident that the natural control measures are soon to be the future of our industry.
Okay, we're running short of time,
Sure.
So I've got two more questions, and then we're going to let you go. So make these quick. The relationship between herbicide residues and plant disease. Can you comment?
I would, let's see. Yeah, I guess I can comment. As far as using glyphosate, we see, some things that we're working on right now, incorporating manganese with your glyphosate applications, because you see a decrease in manganese, or you see a deficiency in manganese from incorporating those herbicides or utilizing glyphosate. It's key to be thinking about those. It's key to be thinking about the nutrition of the plant with the combination of your herbicides. My background was in herbicide development, and it's amazing what a plant goes through to degrade that chemical within its body. So similar to us riding a bike, it has to metabolize a lot of things, and doing that, it needs nutrition in order to get through it. So it's very influential.
So you're saying two things. It's going to be sucking up the vital minerals, maybe, that are so negative interactions with minerals, and another one is the negative energy balance of having to get rid of it. Okay, last question here. Very briefly, how does Agromos work? Agromos, very briefly.
Very briefly. Agromos is a product of ours where we incorporate yeast, our yeast technology in that product. What we are doing, when I was talking about eliciting a response, we incorporate our Agromos technology, our yeast technology, in there because of the materials that are deposited from the lysing of a yeast cell. in a yeast cell, you have, as far as the cell wall is concerned, the same constituents that you would have from a fungal attack, similar type, a similar type pathogen. So what we do is when you incorporate that technology, what you're doing is you're tricking that plant into thinking that it is going to be attacked. So using nature's similar compounds from a yeast cell perspective, we incorporate that into our technology and trick that plant into thinking that it has a pathogen attack impending, and thus it creates a defense against that upcoming disease.
Great. Well, thanks, Steve.